Elinor could not restrain her eyes from being fixed on him with a look that spoke all the contempt it excited. It was a look, however, very well bestowed, for it relieved her own feelings and gave no intelligence to him. He was recalled from wit to wisdom, not by any reproof of hers, but by his own sensibility.
"We may treat it as a joke," said he, "but upon my soul, it is a most serious business. Poor Edward! He is ruined forever."
The entrance of Mrs. John Dashwood put an end to the subject. Elinor could see an attempt at cordiality in her behaviour to herself. She even proceeded so far as to be concerned to find that Elinor and her sister were so soon to leave town, as she had hoped to see more of them. Very early in April, and tolerably early in the day, the two parties from Hanover Square and Berkeley Street set out from their respective homes to meet, by appointment, on the road. They were to be more than 2 days on their journey, and Mr. Palmer, travelling more expeditiously with Colonel Brandon, was to join them at Cleveland soon after their arrival. Elinor looked forward with hope to what a few months of tranquillity at Barton might do towards restoring Marianne's peace of mind and confirming her own. Their journey was safely performed. The 2nd day brought them into the county of Somerset, and in the forenoon of the 3rd they drove up to Cleveland. Cleveland was a spacious, modern-built house, situated on a sloping lawn. It had no park, but the pleasure grounds were tolerably extensive. Marianne entered the house with a heart swelling with emotion, from the consciousness of being only 80 miles from Barton, and not 30 from Combe Magna. And before she had been 5 minutes within its walls, she quitted it again, stealing away through the winding shrubberies to gain a distant eminence, where, from its Grecian temple, her eye, wandering over a wide tract of country to the south-east, could fondly rest on the farthest ridge of hills in the horizon, and fancy that from their summits Combe Magna might be seen. Nothing was wanting on Mrs. Palmer's side that constant and friendly good humour could do to make them feel themselves welcome. The openness and heartiness of her manner more than atoned for that want of elegance which made her often deficient in the forms of politeness. The two gentlemen arrived the next day to a very late dinner, affording a pleasant enlargement of the party, and a very welcome variety to their conversation, which a long morning of rain had reduced very low. 2 delightful twilight walks on the 3rd and 4th evenings of their being there, not merely on the dry gravel of the shrubbery, but where the grass was the longest and wettest, had, assisted by the imprudence of sitting in her wet shoes and stockings, given Marianne a cold. Though heavy and feverish, with a pain in her limbs, a cough, and a sore throat, a good night's rest was to cure her entirely, and it was with difficulty that Elinor prevailed on her, when she went to bed, to try 1 or 2 of the simplest of remedies. Marianne got up the next morning at her usual time. To every inquiry replied that she was better. But a day spent in sitting shivering over the fire did not speak much in her favour of amendment, and when at last she went to bed, more and more indisposed, Colonel Brandon trusted, like Marianne, to the certainty and efficacy to sleep, and felt no real alarm. A very restless and feverish night, however, disappointed the expectation of both, and when Marianne, after persisting in rising, confessed herself unable to sit up, and returned voluntarily to her bed, Elinor was very ready to adopt Mrs. Jennings' advice of sending for the Palmer's apothecary. He came, examined his patient, and though encouraging Miss Dashwood to expect that a very few days would restore her sister to health, yet by allowing the word infection to pass his lips, gave instant alarm to Mrs. Palmer on her baby's account. Mrs. Jennings urged the necessity of her immediate removal with her infant, and within an hour she set off with her little boy and his nurse for the house of a near relation of Mr. Palmer's. Mrs. Jennings, however, with a kindness of heart which made Elinor really love her, declared her resolution of not stirring from Cleveland as long as Marianne remained ill. Poor Marianne! Languid and low from the nature of her malady, and feeling herself universally ill, could no longer hope that tomorrow would find her recovered, the day they were to have begun their journey home.